when you joined Epic and then after Jackrabbit. Now, at the time, I mean, you guys are competing against killers. Like, I mean, this was like John Carmack, John Romero, you've got Doom, you've got Wolfenstein, you've got Quake, like all these games coming out. Like, just, I mean, what was that experience like when you guys were deciding to even put together Unreal?
I mean, it was Rocky Balboa, versus Apollo Creed, and then it was later Creed versus, Drago's son. We were the underdogs. We were the David versus Goliath, and we always found ways to zig when everyone else zagged. I remember, I was making my little platform, Jackrabbit games, and then, Wolfenstein came out, and then Doom came out. And, Tim and Mark at Epic Games were like, holy shit, this is the future. Everything's going to wind up being 3D eventually. And there's still, plenty of games that have that kind of 2D pixel, side-scrolling platform game. They're the kind of games that I love on my Nintendo Switch, like Cyber Shadow and things like that. But at the end of the day, 3D is where we realized things were going. And it was, slowly but surely working on their next big thing, which was a game called Quake, the latest iteration of legendary game programmer John Carmack's, id Tech engine. And we were working on, a game that would be called Unreal. And we looked at, the Quake test that came out, and it was all these, spooky, dark, gray, brown dungeons and Cthulhu-type creatures. And we're like, let's make a beautiful alien planet with large, open environments and colored lighting and just gorgeous environments that the player could kind of get lost in for hours on end. And, we wound up making, a classic game that a lot of people don't remember because, the engine side of business for Epic, where people can give them a chunk of money or points or royalties on their project, and then they get a pre-built, prefabricated engine where they can build their game in, half the time that it would normally take. And Epic realized this would be a very lucrative business model, and so then they wound up making the Unreal Engine this huge thing. And a lot of people forget that it all started with a game that was called Unreal.
Yeah, and in a year later, which I actually want to talk about this in a bit, just the fact that Unreal came out, and then a year later Unreal Tournament came out. Like that's just even that development cycle is amazing. But when you were working on Unreal Tournament, you gave some really great advice to your design team. And I was reading in the book, you said that you can't please all the people all the time, so why not just make most of the people insanely happy some of the time? And if you could speak to how that influenced the game.
Well, I mean, so when the first Unreal came out, the multiplayer, the deathmatch, the capture the flag modes, it was completely broken. The network code was just totally shot. And then, we put ourselves together and we were going to put out, a pack that was basically going to be a way to play multiplayer offline. Because this was, again, we're dealing with the mid to late 90s where not everybody even had internet. People might have actually had, a dial-up connection, the rope going back to the robots fucking, but, they didn't have a lot of broadband and everything back then, so you couldn't assume that people could connect. So what we had were what we called bots, where it was the player's way of just running around these maps and shooting what the player felt like were human opponents, but they actually were just controlled by the PC and by the artificial intelligence. And that was enough for us to kind of bridge that gap into, the multiplayer world. So people would play against the artificial intelligence and be like, hey, I wonder what it would be like to have a good internet connection and then, actually shoot people in the face with these sci-fi crazy weapons. And, Deathmatch came out of id Software, but then Epic took it to the next level. And Unreal Tournament was developed in just a little bit over a year because we had the established base of what Unreal was. So we could just slot in, upgraded characters, upgraded weapons, fixed netcode, upgraded new maps, and we could just make the engine shine better than ever and make, one of the games of the year. And I believe 1999, I think was when it won Game of the Year award. And that's when Epic really started hitting their stride. It was Unreal Tournament 2003, Unreal Tournament 2004, Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and then all the way beyond to the Gears of War franchise.